The L3 Harris speakers here. I think we're in the third or sixth. Fifth speaker here, I think. So for any of you I might not have met, I'm Eric Sander. I lead the Engineering Innovation Institute here at the University of Florida, and so we focus on a lot of courses that focus on engineering entrepreneurship, innovation, creativity, diversity thinking, that type of thing. And part of what's really important to us is giving the general student population the ability to not only sit in a class and kind of get a lot of information on this in class, but maybe more importantly, the things you learn outside of a formal classroom, kind of environment. So that's why we do these kinds of speaker series, and we bring people in from the outside that have real experience that they can share with you. What we've asked of the speakers as they come in is don't try and basically duplicate here is a financial spreadsheet. What give you life experiences. And our guest today, Mr. Deffebach, we have known each other for ever, a long time. He's got great experience. So first of all, he is a gator, right? His wife is actually a double gator. He has a degree in electrical engineering here from the University of Florida. Went off, did engineering, took a law degree from Emory University, did that for a while. Joined a patent firm, focused on IP, and then went to what was then Harris Corporation, now L3 Harris. Worked in their licensing and litigation department, if I remember right? And about a year. Figured out I've known about him for a while now, so I could have almost predicted he would not last a long time. And that auto failure, yeah. But for a good reason, right? If you get into a situation, it's not that you can't do the job, it's just that you realize that you're about to spend another year of your life doing something where you can find ways to add more value. So went off, joined a small firm. They have that now. That firm did very, very well. Fast forward to where we are today, Bud has then gotten on the entrepreneurial side. He co-founded a startup incubator in Melbourne, Florida called Groundswell. I've been there a number of times. If you get a chance, go. I mean, they're incredible. And the companies in that small incubator raised over 100 million in ventures. Somebody online around here. But Bud's very, very, very hands-on, very involved. The one thing Bud doesn't do is hold back in terms of kind of the honesty and transparency of the information he gives you. You may see his family name outside the building here in a couple of places. I won't tell you the quote that he wanted to put on that stone thing. You can go ahead if you want, but it kind of you get pure kind of unbiased and undiluted truth from Bud. So please take it away.
The quote out there is some goat quote, which kind of captures it, but the quote I want, and it's I like to snowboard, and in my house on the mountain, it's be bold, take risks, don't be a dumbass. And so look, you guys, you're here, you're cruising through college. You may be freaking out about a job. I'm gonna go Douglas Adams, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Don't panic. Gonna be fine. And give you the piece of advice that my dad gave me, which I think, if you kind of follow this, I think you'll be all right in your career. Which is work your ass off. And I was looking for a job when I got this one. And so as you guys think about your careers, you're going to make choices, and you don't get paid because you love things, right? I mean, if your work was so great, they charge admission, right? If it was like, hey, this is a day, you're going to get charged admission. The flip side of that is you only get one shot. I mean, you're going to go through life, and I come back here, and we're not sitting in these seats, but on this campus, and the education you get is awesome. The place is fun. Enjoy it. Don't, good grades are important, but for me, like when my kids were in elementary school and they were like, oh, you know, get a perfect attendance record. I was like, okay, I mean, the fact that you don't have something to do better one day than go to class, that's not really a good sign. I mean, so it's kind of a way to say, look, as you go through life, be very intentional. And I want, you know, hopefully this conversation today is you asking questions that you might not, you know, you certainly wouldn't ask your boss because you're going to think you're a slacker, you know, whatever. But that you might want to ask about, hey, as you're facing career choices, what do you weigh? I mean, you know, how do you figure out, like, I'm early in my career and I can't really leverage that, hey, you need me here because I don't have a ton of experience, but I also want to go to, you know, Australia and surf for a month. And will you cut me some slack? You know, those are not invalid questions. I mean, you're all engineers, you all got here because you're smart, you're willing to work, but you're also going to be, you know, parents. You're gonna have all these choices you're gonna have to balance out in life. And so what you're doing today is reflective of what you're gonna do in the future. You're making choices about how you live in terms of, you study all the time? Are you anxious as hell about, you know, a job? Or do you party a little too much and you're like putting off making phone calls to people to get a job? Those are all like very, you know, intentional decisions that you can get really wrapped around the axle about, and they're hard, but you need to address them now because they're how you're going to make decisions later in your career. So, you know, I ask questions. It's, you know, is anybody here from Melbourne or the Space Coast in Florida? Oh, where are you from?
Melbourne Beach.
Where? What street?
Basically the like where it just meets in the Atlantic.
Oh, okay. I live one street across from Ocean Ave.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Like 2 streets away from me, basically.
Yeah. No, I mean, you know, Melbourne's an example. It has more engineers per capita than any other city in the country. It's chock full of engineers. You guys go to a school where you're one of thousands of engineering students, and it's hard to get a job, right? So if you look at small companies all over Florida and the world and get online and go seek out, like, hey, you know, it looks like you're looking for somebody. I'll give you an experience I had. When I took my job, they had 2 job openings. One was for a person with 10 years of experience, and one was for a person with 3 years of experience. And so they brought me in to interview for the job with 3 years of experience, but they put me in front of the group that was hiring for 10 years of experience. And I said to them, this is the job I really want. You know, this is, you know, that's what I want to do. Why do you want to do that? I was ready, and they asked me a question. They said, you know what an insulated gate bipolar transistor is? And I said, no, but I'll stay up all night and figure it out. Hired me. Later on, those guys, we started the company that became my startup. And they became my partners, my co-owners, but they hired me because I went out there and said, you know, look, I'll do it and I'll give you everything I have because this is what I want to do. And if it was something that I didn't want to do, I wouldn't give them everything. You know, and there's kind of something important that I like to pull out. People say, you know, give 100% everything. That's bullshit. You don't have 100% to give to everything. You can't do that. If you give 100% to everything you're trying to do, you're going to run around and lose your mind. Give 100% to the things that matter and decide what are the things that matter. Like right now, you know, if you have a 3.9 GPA, which I didn't, but, you know, and you're in your last semester, and this happened to me, I was taking, it wasn't last semester, it was thermodynamics, and we had this really hard professor, and I could either take the final and try to get an A, or not take the final and get a B. Oh, that's easy. I didn't take the final. I mean, I wasn't in thermodynamics. That's not my field. I had frankly better things to do. And I think those are okay decisions for you to make because only you can make those decisions. Do people have, I mean, do you have any questions about like trying to, you know, I know you guys are better than we were at not getting shoved in a corner by corporations and standing up for your ability to do work that you believe in. But if you have any questions about that, how to approach it, you guys, nothing. Did anybody have any questions so far about like what choices in work or going to a small company versus a large company, pros and cons?
What do you think is better for, like, when you start out, is going to a small company better or is going to a big company?
Yes. So if you had like if you're sitting there on some super interesting idea, and Eric hates it when I say this, but like if I met one of you and okay, a little bit of background, like I got into venture capital probably 14, 15 years ago. And generally my preferred founder has at least 3 or 4 years, preferably not more than 10 or 15 years of experience in a domain. They kind of know something about a product or a market, and they see it and they go, wow, this just doesn't work. Having said that, you know, and if they've been in it for more than 10 or 15 years, you know, you get a little ossified. A lot of people get a little, you know, and they're kind of scared, you know, they got a house, and, I don't know if I can do this. And so that's preferred, but there is no right answer. So if you had a great idea and you came to me and I was like, holy shit, I'd be like, drop out. Like, and my son almost dropped out, Florida. He was a computer science and he got an offer from a company. There are about 60 people. And he said to me, you know, what if I dropped out and went with them? And, you know, they may have an exit. And I said, think about it. Why not? You know, there's not a right answer. He ended up finishing and now he works for him and they didn't exit before. And so probably the right decision. But if you go to a small company, the pros and cons, if you go to a small company, the biggest pro is you're going to learn things faster and in a different way than you ever would at a big company, because you're probably going to learn about not only the design, the engineering you're working on, but you're going to learn about the whole system. You're probably going to learn about pricing. You're going to learn what a BOM is, a bill of materials. You're going to learn about all these different things, probably marketing, because that's what, you know, you're the startups, you know, it's live or die or a small company. You're going to be talking to people at higher levels. You go to a big company, you're going to be working on a piece. You know, here's your piece, which is great. The advantage of the big company is you learn how to do things right. Like you don't, you know, get a box of pizza and pivot the whole company, literally. And I've been part of this, pivot the whole company over a weekend, right? So, you know, you learn how to do things correctly, build out a marketing plan, you know, and all this, and have HR and all. So you do learn a lot of things and you learn about the domain. For me, I am terrible in big companies. It's not a place that I enjoy. I worked at L3 Harris, and my wife said to me, you know, I was not there very long, you know, and she said, if you didn't leave, we were going to have a problem, because I'm not very good at going home and I get passionate about things or I don't care about them, right? If I'm working on something that everybody's kind of like, oh, I get a paycheck in 2 weeks, you know, that's enough for me. Not for me. You know, I need to be with people that are passionate and trying to do something, or I'll go do something I'm passionate about. Like, I love free time. I like to snowboard, I like to surf. So if I'm not working on something I want to do, I'm going to go do something I want to have fun at. that's not the big company style. You know, I mean, they used to say, oh, I go to Japan a lot and I fly in and my boss would say, let's have an 8 a.m. meeting. I'm like, I got in at 1 a.m. I'm not coming in at 8 a.m. No, we're gonna have an 8 a.m. meeting. No, we're not. You know, nothing's gonna change between 8 and 11. I'll be in at 11. You know, I gotta get my shit together. And, you know, that's a big company though. And they don't appreciate that. You know, so that's, depends on who you are. You know, generally, I think you're better off in terms of a broader experience. If you want that at a mid-sized or smaller company, if you're the kind of person that likes the security of a big company where, you know, hey, I know they've been around for 50 years, they're probably going to be around for another 50, and that makes you feel good, then it's great. I will warn you, if you go to work at a big company, and especially if it's a defense contractor, you may become the expert in the world in 20 years at some small area, and then that small area either disappears or you get, you know, and so there are risks out there. And as you think about your careers, you know, I see you with a skateboard. I ride a one wheel. If you like stuff like that, do it. Like if you like music and you're in a double E, get into it and do something on the side, and you know, work your job and then do something on the side, and maybe a company, you know, you can do something different. And I just say it because I think a lot of engineers can sometimes get trapped in the idea that the work is enough. And it can be when you're young. And then when you get to be 30 or 40 and you're kind of like, well, I've been doing this for 10 or 15 years. I'm going to suggest you deserve more. You deserve to work on things that you care about and that mean something to you, and with people that you can share your, you know, belief system. And I'm not saying like walk in, like I'm the corner office and all that, because that's, you know, and a lot of people my age get chippy about that. But I am saying you do have a right to work on things that you care about. And if you're not, start looking around. That's on you. You know, don't feel like you don't have that right. Is anybody here working on something they care about? Like now? Everybody's working on anything they care about. It's all just bullshit academics. Yeah.
I'm crocheting.
Okay.
I made it. I give toys in college, and I like have my water bottle, but I didn't have a way to like carry my water bottle without like having it in my hand. So I made a crocheted bag that carries my water bottle for me.
So here's the question. Does anybody think that there would be a business in there? You think so? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have one of my best friends is CFO. He graduated from UF. He was my roommate in college, and she was in the School of Accounting. Funny aside, one of her first companies that she was the treasurer for was a porn company, and this is when porn just started over the top. They were putting over it and all that. And it's so funny because we used to tease her. She goes, "Look, guys, it's just numbers to me." So this woman, her big exit, she's now retired. She's 55. She exited. Her and her husband actually travel around the country in an RV, and was a company that makes videos and sells products for crocheting, sewing, all that. They sold for $230 million to CBS. CBS wanted the media content. So there's all this content of how to make things like that. You know, you sit there and you go, well, you know, I'm a double E. There's no money to be made in something I'm interested in. It's just kind of a side gig. Yeah, you'd be surprised. I mean, if you're into something, if you got something like that, there's probably a lot of people that have a passion that might be interested. I've got a guy he's an old surfer and he wants to do, connects surf photographers and snowboarding photographers all over the world to average Joes. and James that, they'll take videos and they'll do content and you can share the content. It becomes a platform. Is he gonna make money on it? I mean, he already is a little, but I don't know, maybe. But I think it's cool. I think it's worth a shot. It's what he loves, so what's the harm, right? Anybody else doing anything that they're excited about? Like, are you guys just kind of going through school? I mean, are you afraid to talk a lot? Do I need to say something stupid to get it going?
I'm trying to do it more, but I'm trying to write fiction on the side.
Oh, cool.
However,
That's awesome.
yeah.
That's and there's a lot of question about, media content and, how do you publish? How do other people publish? How do you get known? And maybe you write, and that's great. And it's a way to kind of keep your mind. I mean, for me, as an engineer who at a time had a very stressful job, I used to run. I mean, I would just run, and it would be like I'd put my shoes on and I'd just get the hell out. Maybe that's what that is for you. It's a way to, to have your creativity. What's your major?
Aerospace engineering.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's awesome. Anybody else? Are you guys? Yeah,
I have a research project in controls.
controlling what?
It's a ping pong ball inside of a plastic tube. It's from a previous semester.
Okay, and what do you want to do?
Basically, you just, the task is to be able to dictate the height of the ping pong ball in the tube, and there's a fan on the bottom.
Mhm.
So there's like a comma there. So my task was to take what we learned in class and kind of improve on that and make like a better controller for like game schedules.
And that's, it's interesting. My perspective is you enjoy the engineering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have the freedom to, take the project where I want to, take flow measurements, like pressure measurements, get a better idea of, fluid mechanics and stuff like that.
Would you want to try to create a business out of it?
I could see, whatever I learned from like the controller design, taking that idea and applying it to something else.
That's it. How many people here think they would want to be in business or versus staying technical? Business, technical. Good to know, right? I mean, I think it's important. Your passion is engineering. I love engineering, but I'm not the best engineer. I mean, I'm kind of okay, right? I mean, I worked on some pretty interesting digital systems, but wasn't that good. I happen to be pretty good at business. I'm a really good negotiator. I can read people pretty well. And so that's what I ended up doing. I ended up being a negotiator, a technical negotiator for a living. And if you're gonna, since this class is about being entrepreneurial, it is important to understand where your passion is. I have a CEO of a company called Heliconics in Melbourne, who's a PhD, and he's created a nanoparticle rocket fuel. Rocket fuel really hasn't changed since the 60s. And he's combined the accelerant and the binder. And so it's about 30% more efficient than existing rocket fuels. And David is a great guy, and he is a terrible CEO. He loves the technology. He doesn't love the business that much. He's not really that good at it. So we have a new CEO. He got funded. They got about $3 million. And that's important. He knows that. And that's part of, knowing yourself of what you're passionate about, what you're good at. And then if you want to change, then change. It's okay. If you've been technical for 10 years and you want to go into management, you can do it, but it's not just going to happen because you're going to build up habits over time. You're going to build up thinking processes. When I work with startups, the questions I get about, engineers and, this is a better product. that's enough. And I'll tell you, the number one issue at our incubator is engineers we have, marketing people we don't. And I know you're sitting here in Gainesville going, marketing, I could pass that in my, being really good at marketing is really hard. And it's really important. And we all need to appreciate that in companies, that you need, especially in a small company, you're going to need those skill sets. Somebody's got to bring it to the table. If you don't, you either got to develop it, which can be fun, or it can drive you crazy. I mean, it can be just a horrible thing that I don't like doing this. For example, you guys, if you're looking for a job right now, and you say, I want to go to Denver. You go online to LinkedIn and go, Denver control systems, UF engineering, and start finding people and then just contact them. You'd be stunned, because for people like me, somebody reaches out that's a student, it tells me two things. One, this is a person that's a go-getter. And two, this is a person I want to talk to. So do that. The worst thing that happens is, they don't respond, or, they say, hey, we don't have anything. But back to the personality, if that makes you really uncomfortable, it's going to be hard to be a marketing person. If you ever want to go into management or running a startup, you need to start doing those kinds of things today. Because I have a robotics company in Melbourne. They pitched 500 VCs, raised their $10 million. If that makes you shiver, talking to, reaching out and getting rejected 495 times. And this guy, by the way, is a Navy SEAL, Harvard MBA, got rejected 495 times. May not be for you. But learn now. I mean, and that's the thing. That's, I guess, what I'm trying to tell you is do these things now while you're here. Reach out to people. Go as big as you can in your life. Be bold, take risks. Just don't be a dumbass. Don't stalk somebody. I've fallen in love with this company. I really want to work here. Maybe a little much, but be bold, take risks. Don't be a dumbass. So, anybody else working on anything they're interested in or have questions about careers with? Yeah.
Regarding the split between business and technical, what would you suggest for someone who's more interested in the business side versus I guess in a small versus large company?
Mhm.
You definitely suggest looking for something smaller if you're more interested in that.
Well, I had a guy come to me and say, I want to be a venture capitalist. Okay, but venture firms, he actually wanted to work in a venture firm. Venture firms used to hire MBAs. They don't hire MBAs anymore because MBAs teach, and the things that you have to know to run a startup, you can't teach except by experience. Most VCs today are people who've had exits. I believe that. I think it's changed since. Now, you still will have people that come out, MBAs, and will be in those firms. But for the most part, I think if you like the business side of it, which I always did, I think you'll have a better chance of getting into it more quickly in a medium-sized or a smaller-sized company. If you like the venture side, it's great to go with a company that's been venture back and then try to meet those backers and make contacts. And, if you have an exit, then you can, a lot of times the way venture capital works, and in any town, it's happened in Atlanta. We're trying to make it happen in Melbourne, but what happens is you have a company that has an exit, and probably one or two of the older guys will retire, and they're worthless. But then you have 18 people that became instant millionaires But they're not done. So they found companies, they finance other companies, and it's regenerative. And that's how that network works. So if you can get into that, where you know that, and they're going to start new companies, and it's a very dynamic process. And you'll never run into that working for L3 Harris or, that doesn't really happen there. So it depends on what you're looking for, but if you're looking for that kind of dynamism, then I would say a smaller or medium-sized company. Yeah.
Let's say I take a risk and you're a startup or a small company, right, post grad, and it doesn't, it's not successful, and I just end up without a job. Like, how do I go from that?
If you fail. Did you fail? I mean, okay, like, it's a question, right? Like, that's the fear, right? Fail. Bullshit. You learn all kinds of stuff. You had a job, you lived. I mean, if you worked in some, and not to be pejorative, I did for 8 months, I worked in a vault. Like walking in the morning and leaving, it was a secure vault. Well, that's not me. That was failure for me. So if you did something and you were passionate about it, and it took a swing, you were looking for a job before you were there. Now you've probably got some skills. You may have learned how to market something. You may have learned how to, all these other skills because you were at a startup where you're going to learn all these things. I think you're probably more valuable. My guess is you're going to present as more valuable. The notion that like the transition, and it's somewhat unique to the East Coast. Like you go to California, Stanford or Berkeley, if you haven't done 1 or 2 startups, whether they, made money or not, that's the failure. People look at you and go, you haven't done something. Whether it succeeded or failed, they don't care. And I think it's intriguing to me why, and I used to deal with this all the time because I had clients in Boston and I had clients in California about it. And clients in Boston, right, you'd be at a table and all these old guys wearing suits, the younger guys sitting there being quiet, the old guys talking, the younger guys not talking. And you go to California, nobody's wearing suits. Everybody's sitting around the table, yelling their opinion. And the smartest wins. And by the way, if you were young and you weren't very smart, then you just got eviscerated. But, the point being, everybody had a say, everybody tried. Why is that really failure? I mean, I really question the premise of that there was a failure there. Now, this is where the don't be a dumbass comes in. You do need to be educable. And by that, I mean, at some point, your baby, every founder has their baby. Your baby may be ugly. The world doesn't like your baby. It happens, right? I mean, I'm sorry, it's like, I think this is the greatest thing in the world. I was an investor in a restaurant, right? I was a silent partner in a restaurant. So I go into a restaurant, did the wine list. Wine list is amazing. I know wines. I find good wines for a good price, put them on it. My partner's like, threw it away. It's like, there's no animals on it. You gotta have a picture of an animal on the bottom. People think that's cute. And I'm like, these wines are better, right? I mean, I know people are gonna love these wines. You're not gonna sell them. Right? My baby's ugly. But I wanna sell wine. I mean, you gotta, like, so we sold wine. I mean, I was like, fine, I'll buy my wines. It's not my business. It's my, it's something I do on the side. Maybe if you find, you go, hey, the world doesn't really care about this. But I still love it. You do it on the side and you move on, but at least you took a swing.
Let me add some to that. So a lot of students have asked this question. So I went out and I talked to like 3 or 4 dozen, something like that, hiring authorities in engineering in big companies. And I asked this question, if you had an applicant, and they had a year or so, or maybe 2 years of entrepreneurial experience, and they just flamed, would you be interested? Unanimously, every single one of them said, yeah, because that's experience we can't give in a big company. They just learned a little about engineering, they just learned a little about product development, how to talk to people and everything else. Every single one of them said, yeah, I'd be interested. You know, assuming they weren't, like, the reason they blamed wasn't for or something like that, but, you know, every one of them said, yeah, I'd be interested in talking to that too.
Yeah, I can't emphasize enough how much I agree with that. And with founders, you know, when I probably talk to, you know, a couple hundred startups a year, pitch decks or whatever. And I want to understand their emotional intelligence. I want to understand that they, like, you know, when you bring a pitch deck to me, I don't care what you think about your company. I mean, I really don't. I care that you're passionate, but if you don't think it's good, why are you in front of me? What I care about is what do your customers think of what you're doing? Because that's what's going to define success. And it's that simple. If customers love it, then they're gonna pull you for it, it's gonna sell. If they don't, it's gonna be a really heavy lift. So, you know, the question, you know, back to what Eric said, if you've worked in a startup, you're more likely to understand these things, to have felt that. And if you never get the feeling, there are the worst feelings in the world in a startup and the best. And the worst is, you know, if you guys see Silicon Valley, if you've seen Silicon Valley, it's money. It's a lot like that. Like, we're gonna do four, we're gonna do four. You know, like, seriously, we're all gonna have to go get jobs next week. I'm getting kicked out of my apartment. And it's hard, right? Because your buddies are, you know, you're making, you know, good salaries and they got a paycheck coming in and all that. But the flip side is, and, you know, groundswell, I'm an old surfer, right? There is a feeling when you catch a wave. It just starts lifting you. And if you're ever in a startup where you've been working your ass off and all of a sudden the phone starts ringing and you feel that lift, it's the coolest thing you'll ever experience in business. I mean, it's like something you created all of a sudden has this energy, and it is, quite frankly, addictive. My partner, is co-founder, he's actually went to Florida State, has his degree in math, sold 3 software companies. Grew up in Melbourne like I did, went to satellite, and he got, you know, both of us just do this because we're addicted to that creative process of creating a company out of nothing, creating products out of nothing. It's magical if you ever do it. I don't think you ever get it out of your blood, and you don't do it, then, you know, whatever. I don't know. Questions on startups or big companies? I mean, how to manage? Yeah.
So, like, applying for jobs, I'm definitely interested in the technical business, like, realm of industry, that's kind of job. And whenever I have applied to sales positions, because that's just like what comes to mind whenever I think like that, the people who are recruiting are like, you're an engineer, why are you applying for this? And everybody else on the team is like marketing or finance and like those general business majors. So then I'm like, okay, am I not applying myself and my skills and the, you know, work that I've done
Right.
effectively for this position? So I'm wondering, like, what kind of advice would you give to like find that middle ground for an engineer who wants to be in that like business space?
Well, yeah, so you're talking to the right guy, because I had my double E degree, worked as an engineer for about 9 months, and then I was going back to law school, but I got married. My dad's a PhD double E, his best friend was a PhD double E. And they literally cornered me at my wedding. Like, why are you going to law school? Why are you going to the dark side? Like, that's, why are you going to be a leash on society? Exact word, right? Yeah. Thanks, guys. I'm glad you approve of my career. I was either going to get an MBA or go to law school, because while I love technology, I also, like I said, love the business side of it. And then I was only a patent lawyer for a couple of years because I didn't like the law. I liked the business side of it. So what I'm going to say is, you got to start, somewhere. So if the job you can get is technical and it's in a place you like, then go there but keep looking around and making contacts and getting into it. It's a good friend of mine, Cisco, engineer by trade, hasn't been an engineer in 30 years, super successful business guy because he's got great people skills. He, started, he networked to take advantage of his skills. So that's what I would say to you is, you may, if you don't do a startup and go to a small company, if you go to a small company, you're more likely to be able to transition easily because in a small company, it's like, hey, this has to be done. There's only so many bodies. You're going to get, and you go, hey, I want to do that. I want to do marketing. Let me take over some of that. It's easier in that kind of an environment. In a bigger company, you're going to have to be much more intentional and network much harder or get out and move. But don't be afraid of that. I mean, it will happen if you make it happen. But you're right. If you sit there and they go, well, you're an engineer. My dad, a perfect example, PhD in electrical engineering, and about 10 years into his career, said, I want to go into management, was told, you're making a mistake. You're an engineer. He wasn't making a mistake. He did really well. He became, he managed 3,000 people at the end of his career. And so, I would just say you may have to compromise a little bit at the beginning. But if you push and if you don't accept no, then you'll find that path. I mean, for me, I had experience as a lawyer where I was chirping about wanting to do more litigation, and they didn't want me to because I'm double E, and they wanted me to do this other work. And finally, they had a client who had kind of an functional piece of art that was exactly copied and manufactured in China and brought over. And they were like, this guy can't afford to pay us. Go see if you can help him out. So I ended up calling this firm, and their attorney blew me off, and I knew he was blowing me off. And so what I ended up doing was I filed the lawsuit in federal court before I talked to him next time. And in our conversation, he said, look, kid, I'm not going to do anything. What are you going to do about it? And I said, well, it's not what I'm going to do about it. It's what I've done. I filed the lawsuit. I haven't served it yet. You're going to have to respond. I'm guessing you charge $500 an hour. Your client's going to have to deal with this. And so they paid $50,000 to make it go away. They had copied. They knew they copied. They clearly copied. My firm made $15,000 for my 5 hours of work, which is more than I ever made them like billing out. And I was quickly like, wow, this is better. I helped this guy. He was like a farmer in South Georgia who had made these things, these wireframe things that he made in his garage and sold them. And made me feel good. So it taught me something. And I saw an opportunity, and then I got into licensing, and I licensed, for example, digital cameras. Kodak was our company. So in '98, Kodak brought us up to Rochester, and they said, we invented the digital camera. They invented the CMOS sensor, the first digital camera in the world. We've had, all these engineers who have worked a long time. People are literally making digital cameras, copying our IP. And they hired us. And so we licensed digital cameras. And that's why I went to Japan all the time. It was a business opportunity. So for me, I saw that path, and it became a business opportunity. I got tired of traveling, and I got out of IP licensing and got into venture capital. So I guess would say be open to different pathways. Don't think you've got to, work at a company and do what they say, because you can leave anytime. Questions on?
But there's a question in front of me.
technologies or, yeah.
Yeah, so you mentioned traveling a lot. I know like personally, I love to travel like that kind of. I also do like the kind of sort of startup aspect, I like the small business. So would you find that more often in startups and small businesses versus bigger companies, just the travel opportunities, the frequency of travel?
Well, first of all, so I went to Japan like 80 times. So I'm not the right person to ask about business travel. Like, it's not what it's cracked up to be. Now, I was an uninvited guest. Like, if they had wanted me to be there and like bought me dinner and, you know, that'd be great. But that wasn't how it was, you know, they were not thrilled to see me. So maybe that's part of it, but if you love to travel, and that's a factor in your decision making, I would probably say early on, you might want to go with a bigger company. You know, and I wouldn't be afraid to look overseas. You know, you speak other languages? I do not. I should get on it. No, seriously. I mean, if you could have some fluency, it's obviously going to help your case. I mean, that's the other thing, right? It's what I was saying, you know, I was looking for a job and I found it, but the first part of it, you got to work hard. Start learning another language. If you love to travel, that's going to be important. I mean, because if you sitting there in meetings and they're having a conversation, you know, you're in Munich and they're having a conversation and you don't understand what's going on and you've got a third party and that could be an issue in terms of your success. And plus, you know, when you go to a bar and everybody gets, you know, starts drinking, they're going to switch to German and you're going to sit there, you know, being sad. That's not fun. So, you know, I would just, you know, set yourself up for it. Yeah.
I have another question. So a lot of my friends are starting a PhD now, and I'm thinking about starting a PhD as well. And I would just want to ask your opinion about how important a PhD might be in business or your work.
Well, you probably didn't hear it. I mean, it's a horrible thing to say, but I'm going to say it. The worst founders of startups are doctors, medical doctors, right? The second worst maybe PhDs. I mean, and my wife's a PhD. She's also not a founder. There is that. Yeah, not bad people, but it depends on what you want to do. If you're deeply technical, I've got a startup at Groundsville now that one of the best fiber optic companies, and they found some of the engineers they've stolen them from Harris. They hired them from Harris, and they're great. No business sense, and that's okay. I mean, they're in this startup and they're doing great. It depends on what you want. I mean, if that's your gig, if you love the technology, if you're an engineer at heart, go for it. You know, but I question whether it's really, now Google was started by PhDs, right? I mean, Larry and Sergey are, you know, maybe it's exception that prove the rule. It's not saying it can't happen. It's just that I think it's hard to be really, really good at a lot of different things. And you know, learning what you're good at and what you love and learning what, you know, it doesn't, you know, light your fuse. And maybe you can do the PhD and also do the business side. So I'm not going to say you can't. I'm just going to say that it would be uncommon. And it would, and maybe it's pejorative, like, you know, hey, you're an engineer, you can't do sales and marketing, right? And that's not right. I mean, it's incorrect. It's proven incorrect. But you are going to face that. And you know, kind of hearing it from me a little bit, because I've seen that trend, but I also know it's not true. there are no universal truths like that. So I don't know if that helped or just sent you into a,
No, it's just the same things I was thinking about too. So it somehow reflects what I'm thinking. Yeah.
one of the things that I would say is you can start a PhD program and if it's like, if you don't like it, do something else.
This was what I was thinking.
Yeah, yeah, and, don't, this whole notion that like your aunt and there's somebody in front of you and somebody. It's a terrible construct, right? So like just play with life and take a chance and maybe you do it. And the other thing I'd say is work with people that, never work with somebody who's like, or, if you go to a company that has any kind of things that give you the willies morally or personally, don't go. I mean, seriously, if there's a red flag, run like hell. Because if it stinks a little in the beginning, the smell's not getting better. I mean, it's just not. So be really careful in your career about that. Don't get in those situations. I've known people who get in those situations, and it's hard to get out. Don't work with those kind of people. So, but if you find people you love, you don't even have to love what you're doing as much. And then, the cool thing is that, there's a startup in, they just raised 30 million, so not really a startup. They're the only company in the world that can separate polyester and cotton fibers. So like Patagonia, they make these nice jackets, but you can't recycle them because you can't separate the fibers. Well, these guys have a system to do that and have just raised a lot of money to build the first prototype factory to do that. And that's not what they set out to do. It's wholly unrelated to what the company was formed on. They just happened to find out it works. And they're great people. They care about the environment. They stayed together and figured something out. To me, I see that story a lot. I see really talented people get together, good people who care about something, whether it's they're passionate about literature or they're passionate about the environment, and they feed on each other and they find a way to make something happen. And I think that's the coolest. So, I mean, maybe you do that in a lab, you get a PhD, that's awesome too. Any questions on like interviews or you guys like interviewing? So what are you trying to get across in an interview? What do you think you're trying to do?
Marketing myself.
I would say trying to get across that you're willing to learn, make risks, take risks, things like that.
The person may not be a risk taker. You go interview at Health Heroes and you talk about, I'm a young engineer and I want to take risks. I bet you're not getting a great response. This is recorded. Yeah. I may be wrong. I don't know. I think you have to read the person. I don't think that's unimportant. But I think you're trying to get across a notion of who you are, what you want to bring, your passion.
I think by taking risks, I mean like putting yourself out.
Exactly. Okay. I think that's right. Maybe you guys are just like way more confident than I was at this age. I didn't know what was going to happen. I never had a job in a big company. And, but, I think if you've got a passion for something, if you've got a passion for the engineering aspect, if you've got a passion for travel, you've got a passion for business, put that out there. Try to make a connection. You never know, they might, you might find that they also have that. And that you'll connect with them in a more human way. And so I do think, we all have this notion that they hire GPAs. And a lot of them, idiotically do. right? It's this cutoff of, we only hire people that have a 3.5 or what, which is not a good sign for that company. It's really not, I don't believe. Because I think the notion that that's the, is some boundary condition for a valuable employee is really bizarre. So put yourself out there a little bit and take a chance. And you, more often than not, you're gonna find that if it's a place you want to work, you're gonna get an interesting reaction. Now, you may agree that 3.5 is a grade, and you're a 4.0 and we are the smartest, and good on you. That's fine too. I mean, that could be your place. But if you're an entrepreneur, having that mentality is not a good indicator of success, because random numbers don't represent, life is not binary in any way. It's more like, strange action at a distance, quantum mechanics. Startups are just violently crazy environments where the thing that you think is true can be proven false. And you have to just change everything. And if that makes you uncomfortable, if there's no answers, then, I would not suggest it's a place. And I would say that of all engineers, 20 to 30% are suitable to work in a startup mentally. It's not, whether it's the psychological stress, that lack of comfort with binary, non-binary answers. I think that's an important thing to understand about yourself. If that's not something you can live with, it may not be right for you. If it's something you love, then go for it.
So we've got another class coming up. I was gonna ask you for final thoughts, but I think you just gave them. I don't think you can beat that. So, yeah. But hopefully you're finding those different perspectives. We did Blue Origin a little while ago. You got one perspective, there's different perspectives and where you go. Your job is to figure out, what resonates with you as you go through it.
If you have questions, ask me. I'm on swellstartups.com. We've got companies that are always looking for engineers, always looking for talent. You can contact our CEO. You can ask questions. We've had a lot of UF people come down as interns. And I'm going to just give you an answer. I reserve the right for it to be perfectly wrong. I mean, but it will be my answer, but you're going to have to figure out your answer.
So final thought, Bud is passionate about many things, two of which that kind of impactful to this discussion. One is UF, obviously, that's why it's here. The other is the potential for UF and Melbourne to impact each other, okay? And so he and his wife Kim have been very generous in setting up avenues for students to understand what's in Melbourne, okay? Mr. Trey Womack is standing back there in the back of the room, right? He's a liaison back and forth specifically between UF and Melbourne area. And as I said, we have been known to send groups of students down there. We're always interested in students that are looking, to maybe start their careers in that area. So if that's of interest or whatever, don't talk to me because I don't want to talk to 100 of you, but there's Trey Womack right back there. You can contact any of us, seriously.